There is a specific frequency of silence that you only find in the deep rural woodlands of northern Maine. It is a dense, insulating quiet, composed of millions of pine trees, miles of empty logging roads, and a snow-dampened earth that seems to swallow sound. It is a place where people go to disappear, to step away from the frantic noise of the modern world. And as it turns out, it is a place where machines go to hide. In this remote corner of the Northeast, hidden away in a nondescript outbuilding that looks like it hasn't been opened in decades, sits a shape that is instantly recognizable to anyone with a pulse and a drop of gasoline in their veins. Underneath layers of heavy dust, shielded by a canvas tarp, and surrounded by the detritus of 40 years of storage, lies a legend. We are here to uncover a 1962 Jaguar E-Type. When this car was first unveiled to the world at the Geneva Motor Show, Enzo Ferrari himself, a man not known for complimenting the competition, famously lowered his sunglasses and called it the most beautiful car ever made. It is a masterpiece of British design, a rolling sculpture of compound curves, impossibly long bonnets, and aerodynamic elegance. It defined the swinging 60s. It was the car of rock stars, royalty, and racing drivers. But the car sitting in this Maine barn is different. It is a rebel. If you were to look at it through the lens of a modern, white-glove collector, you might call it a tragedy. But if you look at it through the eyes of history, it is something far more exciting. It is a time capsule of a specific moment in American racing culture, and it holds a secret under the hood that would make a Jaguar purist faint. For 38 years, this car has sat in the dark. The last time its engine fired, Ronald Reagan was in the White House and the Berlin Wall was still standing. It was parked not because of a catastrophic crash, and not because it was wrecked, but for the most mundane reason of all: a simple misfire and a life that got too busy to fix it. To understand this car, you have to look past the mouse nests, the cobwebs, and the dull oxidized paint. You have to go back to 1964. That was the year the current owner, a man named Rod, acquired the vehicle. It was nearly new, a 2-year-old sports car that represented the absolute pinnacle of status. But Rod wasn't interested in status. He was interested in speed, and he was interested in reliability, two things that, unfortunately, the original Jaguar inline-six engine struggled to deliver simultaneously. Rod tells the story with a pragmatic shrug. The Jaguar engine was a marvel of engineering, but it was fragile. It blew head gaskets. It leaked. It required a level of mechanical sympathy that Rod, a man who wanted to drive hard, simply didn't have time for. After 6 months of nursing the British power plant, Rod made a decision that defined the car's soul. He didn't sell it for a Corvette. He didn't baby it. He decided to perform surgery. In the mid-1960s, the concept of matching numbers, the modern obsession with keeping a car exactly as it left the factory to preserve its investment value, didn't exist. Cars were tools. They were canvases. If you wanted to go faster, you didn't worry about resale value. You worried about horsepower. So, Rod took this delicate, sophisticated British roadster to a shop in Brooklyn called Speedway Motors, run by a legendary fabricator named Al Gar. What happened next was a transformation. They ripped out the heavy, complex Jaguar engine and replaced it with the heartbeat of American performance, a Chevrolet small-block V8. This wasn't a crude backyard hack job where someone took a torch to the frame and hoped for the best. This was high-level engineering. The front frame rails, the firewall, and the suspension mounting points were all professionally modified to accept the American iron. Over the years, the engine bay hosted various monsters, from a standard 327 to a stroked 377, all mated to a bulletproof Borg-Warner T10 4-speed transmission, the same gearbox you'd find in a high-performance Corvette. The result was a hybrid long before that word meant fuel economy. It was a machine that combined the aerodynamic grace of the Jaguar with the raw, torquey violence of Detroit muscle. and scientifically, it worked. The Chevy V8 was actually lighter than the long iron block Jaguar 6, shaving nearly 150 pounds off the front end. The car didn't just go faster in a straight line, it handled better. It was balanced. It was a weapon. And Rod used it as one. This is perhaps the most charming and absurd part of the story. Today, an early Series 1 E-Type is a six-figure asset that gets trailered to concours events on manicured lawns. Owners worry about rain, they worry about gravel. But in the 1960s and 70s, Rod used this V8-powered supercar as a truck. If you look closely at the rear of the car, past the aggressively flared fenders that were widened to accept fat racing tires, you might spot something incongruous: a trailer hitch. Rod didn't just drive this car, he used it to haul his racing motorcycles. Imagine the scene in 1968. A bright red V8-swapped Jaguar E-Type, roaring down the highway from Pennsylvania to Daytona Beach, towing a trailer loaded with race bikes, dodging state troopers, and turning heads in every state. It is an image of automotive freedom that is almost impossible to conceive of in today's world of investment-grade classics. It speaks to a time when you bought a car to use it, to use up every ounce of its potential, regardless of what the badge on the hood said. But the car's resume goes beyond towing. It was a giant killer. Rod recalls taking this bastardized Jaguar to Lime Rock Park, the historic racetrack in Connecticut. In the hierarchy of 1960s speed, the Shelby Cobra was the king. It was the ultimate Anglo-American hybrid. Yet Rod claims that on the tight, twisting tarmac of Lime Rock, his Chevy-powered Jaguar outran a 427 Cobra. It was a wolf in sheep's clothing, a sleeper that looked like a gentleman's grand tourer, but punched like a dragster. However, the car is only half the story. In the world of barn finds, we often obsess over the metal and rubber, but the machinery is usually just a reflection of the person who parked it. The story of Rod and his wife, Ruth, is arguably more fascinating than the Jaguar itself. Standing in that dusty barn, staring at the faded Champion Spark Plugs sticker on the window, you realize you are looking at the accumulation of a life lived at full throttle. Rod and Ruth weren't always recluses in the Maine woods. Decades ago, they walked away from high-stakes careers on Wall Street. They traded the trading floor for the salt flats. They were deeply embedded in the golden age of American motorsport. This isn't just a couple who bought a cool car. These are people who were in the room where history happened. Ruth recounts stories of growing up near racetracks in Pennsylvania, casually mentioning having lunch on the lawn with Carroll Shelby, the father of the Cobra and the man who beat Ferrari at Le Mans. She talks about the noise, the smell of race fuel, and the burns on her legs from motorcycle exhausts, as if they were fond memories of a family picnic. Rod speaks of his time at the Bonneville Salt Flats, the holy ground of land speed racing. He wasn't just a spectator, he was a participant. He talks about rubbing shoulders with legends like Burt Munro, the eccentric New Zealander immortalized in the film The World's Fastest Indian. When Rod mentions these names, he isn't name-dropping celebrities, he is talking about his peers. When you look around their property, the Jaguar begins to make sense. It isn't an isolated anomaly. It is part of a collection that prioritizes engineering over convention. Moving from the barn to the basement of their home, the obsession shifts from 4 wheels to 2. Rod's true passion, it turns out, was never really cars. It was motorcycles. But not just any motorcycles. We are talking about the Vincent Black Shadow. For the uninitiated, the Vincent Black Shadow was the Bugatti Chiron of the late 1940s and 50s. It was the fastest production vehicle in the world. To race a Vincent was to operate at the very bleeding edge of what was mechanically possible. Rod raced them at Daytona in the Battle of the Twins class. He has frames, engines, and parts scattered throughout his basement, a hoard of mechanical treasure that would make a motorcycle collector weep. There are Rickman frames, Yetman frames, and pieces of British engineering that haven't seen the light of day in decades. His philosophy was simple and pragmatic. He realized back in the mid-60s that he could race a top-tier motorcycle for the same price it cost just to keep tires on a 427 Cobra. So the Jaguar became the tow vehicle, and the bikes became the passion. It was a calculation of speed per dollar, and the bikes won. It creates a fascinating psychological profile. Most enthusiasts eventually sell their toys. As they get older, they downsize, or they cash in on the rising values of their vintage machines. Life gets in the way, mortgages need paying, or interests change. But Rod kept it all. He kept the Vincent. He kept the parts. He kept the Aston Martin he once owned, and he kept the Jaguar. For 38 years, the E-Type has sat in that barn, protected from the elements, but subject to the slow creep of time. The mice have made homes in the upholstery, leaving their telltale signs across the leather seats. The lacquer paint, applied half a century ago, has cracked and faded into a map of spiderwebs. The tires have rotted into the dirt floor, but the bones are good. The floors, notorious for rusting out on English cars of this era, are surprisingly solid. The bodywork, despite a dent in the nose from a minor mishap decades ago, is straight. The Corvette shifter still sits proudly in the center console, waiting for a hand to throw it into third gear. Uncovering this car is like performing archaeology on the concept of the hot rod. It freezes a moment in time when a car owner looked at one of the most beautiful designs in history and said, "I can make it better." It captures an era where performance was personal, where you built what you drove, and where the rulebook was just a suggestion. There is a heavy debate in the classic car world about what should happen to a car like this. If you put it on a glossy auction block today, the market would scream at you to restore it. They would tell you to rip out that Chevy V8, source a period-correct Jaguar Inline 6, paint it British racing green, and erase every trace of Rod's history to maximize its monetary value. They would tell you to make it perfect. They would tell you to make it sterile. But that would be a lie. To restore this car to stock condition would be to destroy its soul. This car isn't special because it's a Jaguar E-Type. There are thousands of those. You can buy a perfect one tomorrow if you have the checkbook. This car is special because it is this Jaguar E-Type. It is special because of the fabrication work done in Brooklyn in 1964. It is special because of the trailer hitch. It is special because it beat a Cobra at Lime Rock and hauled a Vincent Black Shadow to Daytona. The dust on the fenders and the mouse droppings on the seat are not just dirt. They are the patina of a life well lived. This car serves as a monument to a time when people didn't buy cars to hide them away as investments or trade them like stocks. They bought them to drive, to modify, to break, and to fix. As the tarp is pulled back over the red roadster, leaving it to rest in the quiet Maine darkness for a little while longer, you are left with a sense of awe, not just for the machine, but for the story it carries. Rod and Ruth are still there, in the woods, surrounded by their memories and their machines. They are the guardians of this mechanical history. And as for the Jaguar, it's waiting. It's waiting for someone who understands that perfection isn't about shiny paint or matching numbers. Perfection is a car that tells a story. And in a world of over-restored trailer queen classics that are too valuable to drive, the dusty, V8-swapped, tow-hitch-equipped Jaguar in the woods is the most authentic thing on four wheels. It is a rare find indeed, not because of what it is, but because of what it remembers.